In 3 days, baseball returns to T-Mobile Park. We're going to kick off opening week with a dive into our mailbag coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024. This is Tiding Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKDON to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And this is, of course, Mailbag Monday, the last Mailbag Monday of the offseason. Baseball is upon us. Opening day coming up here on Thursday. Let's get into your questions. We're going to start here with Isaac, who wants us to predict the opening day lineup.
JP Crawford's going to play shortstop. He's going to be the leadoff hitter, at least to start the year. I know some people want it to be Julio, but tough. I don't know what to tell you. It's not going to be. Hitting third is going to be Polanco. Fourth, it seems like they want to do. It seems like they want to hit Cal ahead of Garver. So I assume it'll be Cal catching, Garver at DH. Then at in the sixth hole, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. I think they'll probably go righty on the mound. I think they'll probably go Rayleigh. And then 7, I think, will be Haniger. Will get the opening day nod because he's
You have to, yeah. Especially after the spring that he's had. He's back. He's going to get a big ovation from the crowd.
Yeah,
like, you have to do it.
Yeah, so you live with it for a day. It could go Haniger, Rayleigh. They could flip those two guys. But
you don't think Canzone will get the nod over Rayleigh?
He might. That's
had a better spring.
Sure. I mean, Rayleigh's had a better career, but sure, if you want to base it off of 30 plate appearances, fine. So maybe it is Canzone, but I would like to not have both Canzone and Haniger in the outfield as much as possible at the same time. But it's opening day, so they kind of play a little looser than they would in July and August. But yeah, Crawford, Rodriguez, Polanco, Raleigh or Garver.
I would prefer it to be Raleigh than Garver because of matchups later on in the game. Like, all right, if you want to flip Cal to his weaker side, to the right side, then after that, you got to deal with right-handed Garver against a lefty.
Yeah. I think they'll probably give. I'll say Crawford, Rodriguez, Polanco, Garver, Cal, because they like to do that left right thing.
Sure.
And then I would go, let's see, if Raleigh's hitting after Garver, then they would need a righty, so that would be Haniger. Then I'd go Rayleigh, and then the righty would be France, and then the last guy, either Urias or Rojas. So I feel like it'll be Urias. I think they'll give him the opening day nod. So Crawford, Rodriguez, Polanco, Garver, Raleigh, Haniger. I'll say Rayleigh. It could be Dom, and then France and Urias could also be Haniger and France hit back to back. They don't want to keep breaking up the righty lefty, but it does seem to me like Scott, his preference would be to go left right, as for the duration of the lineup.
Next question here from Jared. Looking at the roster, what would you say is the biggest weakness at the moment? And do you think we have the capability, i.e. in the minors /trade, to fill that hole?
If, knock on wood, Gilbert gets a blister and has to go on the 15-day IL or whatever, can you cover that, 2-3 times through the rotation? Sure. Can you cover 7, 8, 9, 10 times through the rotation? No, not even close. So starting depth is something, and no, you don't have that in the system right now. You really don't, because Emerson Hancock is the number 6, and he doesn't look like he's a major league quality pitcher to me. Now, I only saw him pitch the once. Thanks, John. But yeah, it didn't look good. So looked the same as it was last year, and last year he didn't look good either. So starting pitching depth is certainly the it's on the back burner because you have a 1 through 5 that's pretty strong. But when it inevitably hits, when you need that starting pitching depth, you don't have it. So can you fix that through the minors on a short-term basis? Yes. On a long-term basis, no. You're going to have to go out and make a trade. Can they go make a trade for a starter? Sure. Yeah. They have the ammo to make a trade for just about any type of player they want. So can they cover for that? Yeah, probably, depending on what the market looks like. Bullpen is kind of one of those ones that's up in the air because it kind of depends on how soon and for how long you get Matt Brash and Gregory Santos back. So both those guys are back by the end of April, and they stay healthy all year. You're probably fine. You still might want to add to the bullpen, but you're not. It's not going to end up being such a huge ask that you have to go and spend your best prospects on Devin Williams or whatever. So I think for me, I look at this and I go, biggest weakness. Probably could use a little more thump in your corners.
Yeah.
Particularly first base or third base. Now that could change if Ty hits 25 home runs this year, you're fine. So can you go out and get a corner guy, a corner bat in trade? Yeah, easy. Yeah. Every year you can go get those guys. So
yeah, especially 1 year stopgap types or a couple months
the Tommy
of a guy.
Pham, the Mark Canna.
It's not going to cost you that. Yeah, it's not going to cost you that much.
No, so
which is why we were so pissed off about not getting Mark Canna or Tommy Pham last deadline, but whatever. Not relitigating the deadline.
I've been told wouldn't have made a difference.
Right, but the corners are the most. Yeah, the corners are the most obvious spot because there's so many question marks there. There's question marks with Canzone. There's question marks with Haniger. There's question marks with Urias and Rojas and France, etc. So. If some of those guys don't pan out the way that you're hoping, then you're probably going to have to go outside of the org to address that, especially in the infield, and especially at third base, right? Now, you can mix and match things like Ryan Bliss could come out, could come up and play second, and then Polanco moves over to third. Or, if France doesn't pan out, you have Ty Locklear and you can try things out with him. But third base is going to be pretty difficult to address outside of the organization because even if some guys that we don't think are available right now do become available, there's going to be so few options that market is going to get flooded with offers. You're probably going to get into bidding wars with other teams. And are you going to be able to acquire a player at third base for a price that you feel comfortable with? We'll see.
And a price that ownership will approve of.
That's right, too.
X factor. So
right, because like if Nolan Arenado becomes available, for example, right, like you might be able to fit the bill in terms of the trade package, but can you add his salary? Probably not.
Right. So if you really have to go out and make a big change at third base, probably what you're doing is you're probably just sliding Polanco to third, and then you're just kind of trying to live with a Bliss, Rojas, more situation.
Maybe. Maybe you trade for like, let's say Adam Frazier's having like a 100 WRC plus season. Maybe you go out and get him or someone like that to play second base for you.
Patrick Wisdom is expendable because of what the Cubs did, and so somebody like Patrick Wisdom is available. Like, it's the corner infield spots are the ones you're watching, and also the corner outfield spots. So, guys in the corner. Thankfully, again, those are the most like finding a stopgap solution in one of those spots. Unless it's third. Not all that difficult. If third base is a big issue, you might just have to kind of band-aid it and live with it because you're not going to find a guy who's cheap and available at the trade deadline that isn't probably going to cost you significantly more than it's worth.
All right, so we got more of your questions coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, but first, a reminder, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKDON, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Before we get back into your questions here on Mailbag Monday, Colby has a question for you. Colby, what is it?
I don't think we've asked this before. I think we were going to a few weeks ago and we just never did, but that should be your hint, Ty.
I don't remember.
Pretzels.
Oh,
Pretzels.
what about them?
Are they a chip or are they a cracker?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm feeling chip. They do sell them in the chip aisle, though. They come in a chip bag.
So they're also not made of potatoes.
Yeah, but like Doritos aren't either.
Yes, those are corn chips.
Yeah, they're not made out of potatoes.
They're made out of corn.
Yeah.
They're chips.
Mm-hmm.
Pretzels are not made out of chips, or they're not made out of corn or potatoes. They are bread.
And so because they're not referred to as chips, they are not chips?
No, because they're a Nabisco, buttery cracker. That's what they are, just in pretzel form. They are a salted cracker.
All right. Well, you guys let us know what your answer is down below. Dorian wants to know, who do you think will make the biggest impact off the bench over the course of the season between Demo, Haggerty, Bliss, and Samad Taylor?
Let me ask you this, Ty. Have any of those guys posted a 100 WRC plus before?
Sam Haggerty has.
And
Dylan Moore.
Right. So why should I pick anybody but one of those two guys? Now let me ask you this, Ty. Has Sam Haggerty ever hit a go-ahead grand slam against the Houston Astros to cap off an epic comeback and nearly start a brawl as a result?
He did not?
The answer is Dylan Moore. Nobody hits for more power. Nobody steals more bags. Nobody swings and misses more than Dylan Moore. So he's the answer.
The Dylan Moore hater of you is like really fighting inside of you right now to come out. We got a glimpse of it right there.
I mean, he swings and misses a lot.
He's still in there deep down.
It's an ugly swing.
You're trying to repress him. You're trying to push him down, but he's fighting back a little bit.
No, but the answer is Dylan Moore because he's the guy who's given you the best impact off the bench for the last 4 years. Now, we could argue whether or not that means that, your bench needs to be better. But I would also say that, the bench on a day-to-day basis is going to include one of, Luis Urias, Josh Rojas, Dom Canzone, Luke Raley, or Mitch Haniger. And those guys are all more likely to give you an impact off the bench than Dylan Moore. So, it's not exactly a fair question, but obviously this is more about utility type guys. So
Moore is a quality bench player. I don't think there's really any arguing that. And I think the times that he has struggled has been when the Mariners have asked a little too much of him, have put him in positions where he's not necessarily going to succeed. But we know that he's going to give you quality defense. He's going to steal you some bags. He's going to hit some home runs. He's going to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Good bench player. Shouldn't be an everyday player, but a really good bench player.
He also draws an insane amount of walks, which I don't think people overlook because he does strike out a lot. In that sense, he's not your prototypical bench guy because he is swing as hard as I can in case I hit it type of guy. That is who Dylan Moore is, but it just leads to more upside now. Bliss and Taylor come up and they start to do some things, then we could have a different conversation. But until they succeed at the major league level, the answer is Dylan Moore. And one thing that Dylan Moore can do that none of these, Bliss can, but that Haggerty and Taylor can't do is that Dylan Moore could play shortstop, a legitimate fine shortstop. So yeah, I think honestly Bliss might end up being Dylan Moore. If Samad Taylor is the Sam Haggerty replacement in the organization, Ryan Bliss might be the Dylan Moore replacement in the organization. So For this year, I'd say Dylan Moore. Do I think Bliss has a higher upside, higher ceiling than Dylan? I do, but until we see it, I'm not going to trust it.
Like, I think there's a chance that Bliss can be an everyday player, and I think there's a non-zero chance that he could have a Jose Caballero-esque season where he just puts up 2 wins, if depending on how much action he's able to get. But he's someone that I feel like even if he doesn't really hit that much, he can still make a lot of things happen in other areas of the game and be a valuable piece because of that.
I feel like you can make the same argument for Samad Taylor.
Totally agree.
Haggerty, I don't see it. But Haggerty's still a useful player. Like he's a valuable person to have in your organization, particularly because he still has that option left.
Next question here from Jay. Do you see the Mariners potentially sacrificing the farm for an outfield bat at the deadline if, heavens forbid, Mitch has to miss a great portion of the year and the others underperform?
If you're asking, will they, by sacrificing the farm, do you mean like they're going to...
That sounds like Luis Robert to me.
Right. And no, I don't see that. Yeah. But like, do you mean like by sacrificing the farm, do you mean like trading a top 10 prospect or two to go get a multi-year solution in a corner outfield spot? Sure, they could do that. If you mean like burning the farm to the ground to go get a rental, like to go give up Colt Emerson and Harry Ford to go get
Juan Soto.
Yeah, like no, that is absolutely not going to happen. They're never going to make a trade like that. Yeah. So, if you think they're going to go all in, right, which isn't really a thing, but is specifically not a thing for the Mariners. We know they're not going to do it. They are not ever going to push all their chips in on one season. It's about keeping the window open for as long as you can. And, in this case, you talk about Mitch, you talk about the other outfielders. Those are all corner guys, right? So I can go get Mark Canha for Axel Sanchez, and that doesn't rob my farm or sacrifice really anything. And I can go get a major leaguer at these spots. So in this specific scenario you laid out, no, but sacrificing is kind of there's some nuance there. Because like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about like, would they trade Harry Ford for 1 year of a corner outfield bat? No, probably not. No. Would they trade Harry Ford or Tyler Locklear or Jonathan Clase for, a year and a half of like a good but not great corner outfield guy? Maybe maybe an Ian Happ type. Yeah, they might. So the sacrificing word is a little bit like they're never going to go all in on one player on one deadline. Never going to happen. Not with Jerry DiPoto at the helm. But yeah, I mean, they could, overpay a little bit. Like, could they make the Luis Castillo trade again, but for an outfielder? Yeah, they could. Sure. As long as that outfielder is, roughly the Luis Castillo equivalent. Yeah, I could see them doing that. But even that trade didn't rob the farm, right? But they did. They did take a hit from it. So yeah, they can make a trade like that. Sure.
Yeah, as long as the player has at least another year of club control.
Sure.
Then I can totally see it. But yeah, the Juan Sotos of the world, like even if the Yankees suck this year and Juan Soto becomes available, I know he's going to be someone that we would get asked about a ton leading up to the deadline. But it's just the Mariners have been so risk adverse. This front office has been so risk adverse in terms of stuff like that, where it's like you're basically pushing all your chips in on one season. And I even asked Jerry DiPoto about this, when we had him on a couple weeks ago. Like, could you foresee yourself doing something like that? And the answer was pretty much kind of in a roundabout way, but the answer was pretty much no.
Right. They're not going to value 2024 so much that they're going to feel like they're in a position where they have to completely rebuild the farm to take another shot like this. So they'll make smart trades, and like I said, they could make aggressive trades. I think what we're looking for as fans is, can you go make a trade or two that is somewhere in between the Luis Castillo trade and the Paul Sewald trade? Like, can you go and like give up Jonathan Clase for, I'm just making up names, but like,
can you do something that's something that's not necessarily the Luis Castillo trade, but also not, the Cameron Maben trade?
Right. Not the Kirk Casale. Like,
right.
They said, can you go trade Jonathan Clase for Brent Rooker?
Yeah.
Like, can you do something like that? Or are you just going to be like, oh no, we'll just trade Axel Sanchez for, Manuel Margot, which is like still fine. I would have been happy with that last year, but it's like, can you make an impact trade that doesn't require you giving up 2 of your top, 3 prospects?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think they could.
Yeah, like, can you make a trade that's, like, more in your 8 to 20 range of prospects?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which still might hurt,
Yeah.
because you might really like maybe you trade Tyler Locklear for, a year and a half of a, I don't know, like a number 4 starter. It's like, does that hurt a little bit? Yeah. Yeah, because you like Locklear, but does it make sense relative to where you are? Yeah, absolutely. So you're okay with it.
Mhm. All right, we got a few more of your questions coming up here in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV as soon as possible. Fire TV also recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday, our last Mailbag Monday before opening day. Just a reminder for what's coming up the next couple of days. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing bold predictions for the Mariners 2024 season. Then Wednesday, we're going to be doing predictions for the entire MLB season. We're going to be doing division winners, awards, World Series picks, all that good stuff. And later that day, we're going to be recording our opening day preview, which is probably going to come out a little bit earlier than most of our episodes do on Thursday, so you guys can get hyped for first pitch. We're also going to be doing a live stream on our other channel before first pitch on opening day. Going to be hanging out with you guys. Might get some people to swing on by. We'll see, and talk a little bit with the chat and hang out for, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours before first pitch. So yeah. All right. Next question here comes from SOB24. In your eyes, why do some players get seemingly blacklisted while others get many opportunities? I'm looking at someone like Brian Anderson, 10 career F4, 102 OPS plus, who was very good some seasons, versus Josh Rojas, 3.9 career F4, 92 OPS plus. So on that specific example, Anderson's an older player. He's had, 3 bad seasons in a row. Meanwhile, Rojas is just a year removed from being an everyday player by FanGraph standards. He's a younger player. It should be pretty obvious why.
Versatile.
Yeah.
And by the way, Brian Anderson didn't get blacklisted. He literally was just in a spring training camp.
Right.
He's not blacklisted.
Blacklisted is a bit of an aggressive term there.
Right.
Blacklisted, to me, my interpretation of that word would be completely out of the league. But I get essentially what you're saying, right? That this player isn't being given the opportunities that a Josh Rojas is given. Why is that? That's essentially what this question boils down to.
Right. And 99% of the time, it's because the league thinks that the player that is getting opportunities is better than the one who's not. And like Ty said, in this specific example, Anderson hasn't been good in at least 3 years. And it's not because he hasn't gotten opportunity. He played a ton for the Brewers last year. He wasn't good. He's played a lot for the Marlins. He wasn't good. Like, he had a shot. He didn't perform. So now baseball's kind of looking at him and going like, this is an older player who hasn't produced in a couple years, who really only plays, should really only play, third base or right field. And they look at Rojas, who's a little bit younger, has produced much more recently than Anderson, who could play second, could play third, can even handle a little bit of shortstop. And they look at that and they say, well, this guy's better. So yeah, it's blacklisted is not the right word to use here, but does Anderson get overlooked? Maybe, but it's kind of tough to talk about how you're not getting a fair shot when you've been given 3 years in a row at the major league level to produce and you haven't. Whereas Rojas has been really only struggled once in the last 3 years. And even that he figured out pretty quick when he got to Seattle. So that's why. There's also things like, in some cases it's like prospect shine. Like, why is Jared Kelenic, getting so much more hype than Cade Marlowe? Well, Jared Kelenic was a top 10 prospect in all of baseball, and nobody knew who Cade Marlowe was until last year. Does that mean that Kelenic's a better player than Marlowe? No, not necessarily. So a lot of it, some of it's perception, but a lot of it is just production. And Brian Anderson has not produced the last 3 full seasons that he's been given a shot to.
And his clock is running out a lot faster than Rojas, right? So, Anderson, I believe his last year where he was an above average hitter was the COVID shortened season. So he hasn't necessarily been good or had a good full season since the turn of the decade.
Yeah, it's Anderson's not the right guy to use this with, but why do some guys get repeated looks? Versatility, prospect shine, controllability in terms of options and how many years of club control they have, money. If to sign Brian Anderson, he wants $5 million and Josh Rojas is only going to make 3. Rojas is a better player and he's cheaper. No brainer. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go into this, but it's production. It's production. If a player is productive and they haven't had off the field issues and they're still not getting signed, then that's blacklisted. But guys who have been given opportunities and just failed in them, you just don't get unlimited opportunities. Before the league just finally goes, they're like, okay, you know what, we're fine. And I'm sure Anderson will find a minor league deal somewhere and continue to play, and get another shot in the big leagues at some point. But he's not blacklisted. He just hasn't been good for an extended period of time. That's what's keeping him from another shot.
Next question here from Max. Give us your final updated bullpen for opening day. Is it Bolton and Tyson Miller for the last 2 spots?
It should be, but it's not going to be. Colin
as far
Snyder
as we're aware.
Well, as far as we've basically been told, Colin Snyder is going to be on the opening day roster instead of Tyson Miller. Miller will go to Tacoma. There is no opt-out in his deal, we've been told. So it's not like you're in danger of losing him. He has options, blah, blah, blah. And he signed a minor league deal anyway, so you don't have to option him down. So he'll be in the org. It does sound like the Mariners really like him, but they want him to go down to Tacoma, and sounds like they're going to put him in the Rainiers rotation. So just so that he can get the reps of the things they're asking him to tweak. But no, it's going to be Snyder and Bolton, and both those guys do have options left. So, it's not like they have to stick around or you have to risk losing them. You can send them down, up and down all year if you want. So, no, it'll be Snyder and Bolton, and then I think it's going to be Voth, Thornton, Saucedo, Spire, Stanek, and Munoz on the opening day bullpen.
So we'll see what they're going to do with these 40-man spots that I think are going to be opened.
They have one open right now.
Yeah, they have one already open. In the next 2 to 3 days, Taylor Trammell is going to get traded or DFA'd. That's going to open up another spot. And we still have no clue what's going on with Edward Bizardo. So I would assume that there's at least a decent chance that he's going to end up on the 60-day IL to start the year. So that would open up another spot. So I don't know what they're going to do with all those spots. I don't know if they'll do anything with those spots. They don't have to. They might just hold on to them until they, have to call, or until they want to call up Tyson Miller, until they want to do whatever, right?
I mean, they're also going to monitor other roster cuts. There are guys who are out of options who might, they might be interested and they might claim, and that could bump somebody like Snyder or Bolton off the opening day roster. If the Mariners claim a guy and they want to send somebody down, there you go. So, but yeah, it's Miller. I suspect we'll see Miller at some point this year. It does really feel like they think maybe he could be their Penn Murphy at some point this year. but it's not going to be on opening day. But there is, I've been told, no risk to losing him. He does not have an opt-out in the minor league deal he signed, and obviously he has options left and all that. So I suspect Miller will get a shot at some point, but to start the year, it's going to be Snyder and Bolton, and we'll see if they add anybody in the waivers over the next couple days. And if they do, then it's probably one of those two guys going down. And then the other one probably goes down when Brash or Santos is ready to go. So, but yeah, I think it'll be Bolton and Colin Snyder.
Next question here from Tom. What position would you choose to have in a snake draft fantasy baseball league? Say it's a 12-person league. All right, I don't play fantasy baseball, so this is all yours, Colby.
Well, I mean, do you get to choose? Seems weird. I think you want to be 6 or 7, somewhere in the middle. You're less susceptible to runs, so like you won't be on the tail end of, if you pick at the beginning and then like it's possible you don't pick again for 24, players get taken. What if 18 of them are starting pitchers? You're screwed, right? So I think you want to be somewhere in the middle, ideally. So that way you can always, be in the middle of a position run instead of at the end of it or trying to predict when the next one's going to start. So for me, 6, 7, 8 is somewhere I'd like to be. You can still get a really good player there. 1 and 2 are fun because you're getting Acuna or Julio, but it's a long way back. Although in a 12-team league, a little less so. If you play in a 16-team league and you get the first overall pick, it's a lot less fun once you take Julio at 101 and you got to wait around forever for your next couple picks. So yeah, I would say ideally 5, 6, 7, or 8. One of those 4 spots is kind of the place to be.
Mm-hmm. Last question here from Kelvin. It's another Colby question. Colby, are you going to opening day? And if so, any chance of getting a picture?
I am not, but the answer is still no. I am like Bigfoot. You have to take a blurry picture of me from afar.
Oh. Truly not the man of the people then.
Apparently I am though. But no, I will not be at opening day. So I will be at a Mariner game next week at an undisclosed time and location. But yeah, can't go to opening day or opening weekend. Big birthday weekend in my family, the last week of March. So I got a couple birthday parties, and obviously again, getting up there on a Thursday night, not the easiest thing for me. I'm about 2 hours away.
All right, that is going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.